You are now listening to the War Report Podcast Network.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the College Loop Podcast, episode 224 of the College Loop Podcast. I'm Dylan Larck, ABoyTech on Twitter, here to talk about the latest Auburn athletics news, which is still the off-season, still a very dead period for breaking news, but recruiting picking up some slack, as we know from the last episode of the College Loop, where we talked about the class of 2025 as a whole, but also 2 new commits and plenty more to come by the end of the month, and we are ready to talk about it whenever it happens. But today, we are going to be focusing on SEC Media Days because the schedule was announced. Auburn will be on day 3 of Media Days, as everyone well knows now. If you watch Media Days, which I do all the time, I love SEC Media Days. Just because you get to hear all the perspectives across the entire SEC. You get 16 teams now, which a lot of fun. Now that Oklahoma and Texas are officially in the SEC. But Auburn has now announced who their 3 players will be. And I guess for a lot of Auburn fans, it's kind of a realization that the team is right behind their guy at quarterback. Because going through each one, I'm going to kind of go off of what I think. Eugene Asante being the first guy I saw being named, that's pretty on par. Definitely the leader of the defense, vocal leader, leader on the field, off the field, all of the above. Whenever you think of a leader, you think of a guy like Eugene Asante. So no surprise there. I think if I would have predicted my own list, I would have had Eugene there without a doubt. The other 2 guys, I want to say. So the next guy is Payton Thorne. I don't think that would really have surprised me. Hugh Freeze has been behind Payton Thorne ever since he picked him up last year. Of course, the season didn't really foretell that because the fact that he was flipping between him and Robbie Ashford. You go into an offseason where a lot of fans are on the fence about their feelings towards Payton Thorne and on the fence towards where they think the offense is going to be under Payton Thorne. But with the additions of having and choosing out of the bucoodles of different players on the roster, Hugh Freeze picking Payton Thorne to be a what's the word for a good Lord, words are difficult today. Basically, excuse me, I'm going to pause. So the word I just had a mental complete brain fart about was representative. That's funny to me, but to choose Payton Thorne to be a representative of the team kind of shows you the trust that Hugh Freeze has in his quarterback. Of course, I don't think the fan base is thinking that Payton Thorne is going to be this breakout superstar player, but he's going to be much improved. And of course, a lot of teams, a lot of players, I don't want to say players and teams, a lot of analysts, that's the word I want to find. Analysts and fans seem to be kind of extremely down on what Payton Thorne can do. Of course, going off last year, it was just a Tower of Babel in the offense, play calling room, because both Philip Montgomery and Hugh Freeze never really agreed on much. But you get the play calling that you want. You get a playbook that you want. You get to work all season long with it. You've seen what Payton Thorne can do on the high end of him as a player, as him as a quarterback, and you've seen at Michigan State. I don't know if I have my camera there, but going into this year, you're seeing a lot more confidence from Payton. You're seeing a lot of confidence in the players that are, right next to him. You're getting that from Cam Coleman. You're getting it from the other wide receivers, the offensive line. You're getting that from everybody. There's a buy-in happening inside the locker room to Payton Thorne. And of course, that's already happened in the coaching office. That's what you're seeing that right now. And of course, I know a lot of people don't. There's never going to be a full 100% agreement on a quarterback going into a year. I think that's never been the case, especially the last decade at Auburn. It's always been someone else is behind that guy starting that should be starting instead of him. It's happened with, God forbid, Jarrett Stidham. I heard a lot of people whenever I was at school at Auburn saying to bench Jarrett Stidham and put in Malik Willis. And the next year it was bench Bo, put Joey Gatewood in, or put Malik in, or put Joey in. I believe that would be the better one. And then after that, it was bench Bo, let TJ throw, which I will stand by the fact that I hate anybody who said that unironically. If you said it unironically, just know I am dead serious. I don't think you know ball if you ever said that again unironically. If you said it ironically, you can get away with it. But yeah, but Payton Thorne being announced as the representative was really cool, especially for a guy like me who has been on Payton Thorne's bandwagon ever since the end of the Robbie Ashford bit came to a close. But I mean, Payton Thorne is starting quarterback for Auburn in 2024, and that's not really something you can dispute. There's not a quarterback on the roster that I think has earned the chance to start over him going into this year. You don't want to throw Walker White into the fire. Holden Gerner hasn't really proved himself outside of practice, really, and you don't know what you have fully in Hank Brown. You've only really seen a little bit of him. Payton Thorne has an opportunity to go out in front of the entire media that'll be going to, I don't know where it is this year. I don't know if it's in Nashville or Birmingham. I didn't even look that up. Has the chance to go in front of the media and prove and tell that there should be a buy-in. There should be some trust. There should be some belief that he can turn this offense around from what it was last year. And I think he is fully capable of doing that. I don't think there's a mindful analyst around college football that isn't the least bit, I don't know what the word is, but they're not completely sure on the fact that Payton Thorne can't do his job at Auburn. I know there's going to be a lot of fans that think that just because you saw what happened last year and you just don't believe that, the quarterback whisper of a head coach can turn that around. But again, we've seen it happen before Payton Thorne. We've seen him almost throw for 3,000 yards. Had he had the offense all of last year, who knows where the offense would have looked like? Who knows if there would have been extra wins being added to the column? But yeah, that's huge for Payton Thorne to be announced as the representative. And the last guy who we haven't got to yet, Keldrick Falk, being announced as a sophomore is another telltale sign of how good this defense is, because you got a sophomore coming in his true sophomore year. So his second year on the Plains, he's already established himself as a leader for the defensive line. So huge shout out to Keldrick Falk. I don't even think there's been a sophomore ever been put up for Auburn that I can recount. I mean, last year, I know Elijah McAllister was named in just his first year, not even first year, first few months on the Plains, but getting a true sophomore up there is really cool. And I'm very excited to see how he responds to just questions about the defensive line, because I know there's a lot of question marks surrounding what the interior looks like, what the outside looks like, but what's the interior look like? And just kind of seeing where his growth is, what's the recruiting like, when what does the defense look like, especially when they add Caleb, his brother, to the defensive line as well, because that's going to be a lot of fun to watch those two play together. But that's the three. Let me know what you think about that three. I think that's a pretty decent three across the board. I don't think I would change it out. Other players I think that should be somewhat put around that list is going to be like Jalen McLeod and Keontae Scott and some other guys like that been in the program a little longer. You don't really, or at least going into their second year as a veteran player. And Keontae Scott, of course, been at Auburn for, I believe, 3-4 years now. I think 3. But yeah, SEC Media Days. That is only, I think, a week away. I could be wrong about that. I did not look at the date, so that's my issue right away. So I'm going to have that up. So July 15th is when it starts. So July 15th, you're going to get LSU, Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt. There's 4 days. My bad. Day 4. Auburn's going to be on day 4. So sorry, that's going to be coming up later. Day 2 is going to be Georgia, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Tennessee. The 17th on Wednesday is going to be Alabama, Florida, Mississippi State, and Steve Sarkisian. And Texas. They didn't put the college next to it, so that's what I was confused by. That's why I read that. And Thursday, you're going to get Arkansas, Auburn, Kentucky, and Texas A&M, and that's another weird one that I'm on Sports Illustrated. That's a weird layout of why they have that. So yeah, check that out. Definitely, we'll be talking about whatever Hugh Freeze, Keldrick, Eugene, and Payton all say after their day, and of course that'll probably be on the. Actually, that'll be on the live stream when we're going to be able to talk about that. But today's meat and potatoes of today's episode is, of course, going to be us continuing our way too early season preview series with Auburn's week 6 opponent, I believe, week 6 opponent, but the 5th opponent on their roster, on their schedule. I'm dumb. 6th opponent on their schedule. I am just all out of whack today. The Georgia Bulldogs. This is going to be for the Georgia Bulldogs, and that is just a game that really sucks because I am not confident whatsoever. I'm currently flipping through my magazine just to make sure I have the count right. And I'm gonna have a little rant towards the end of this about the Phil Steele magazine because I am not too excited about what they're saying about Auburn in this magazine. So yeah, 6th opponent for Auburn this year is the Georgia Bulldogs. Deep South Oldest rivalry continues as well. I mean, of course, we don't get LSU this year, which does suck, but you do get Alabama and Georgia. Auburn has not beaten Georgia in this rivalry since 2017. Of course, there's been some close calls. Last year being 27-20, but this game is going to be in Athens, and Athens is not a place where I feel very confident in Auburn. Of course, last week I did say Oklahoma would probably beat Auburn very close. That was a 50-50 game that I think it really depends on how OU plays against Tennessee. But Georgia has a pretty tough schedule before they play Auburn and a pretty tough schedule after they play Auburn as well. I mean, you're looking at a Georgia team that's going to have played 4 games up to this point. It'll be Auburn will be their 5th opponent because they have a bye week because they play at the start of the season. They play Clemson in Atlanta. They play Tennessee Tech, which will be a bye week basically. They'll go at Kentucky, which is another question mark team because I've seen a lot of people up or down on Kentucky. I'm not too high on Kentucky this year because I don't think Mark Stoops is going to be that much longer. Bye week before they go to Tuscaloosa to play Alabama. And of course, then they play at Auburn and then Mississippi State at Texas. Bye week before they go to Jacksonville to play against Florida. Then they travel to Oxford to play Ole Miss. Then travel back to Athens to finish up the season with Tennessee, UMass, and Georgia Tech. That's a pretty tough schedule for Georgia. Probably the toughest schedule they've had in a hot minute, especially with the additions of having Clemson and Texas being added to the roster. And then playing Alabama, that's always going to be a great game as well. That's going to get the night game. I had someone commented, I can't remember who it was, that's probably why we're going to get the night game for Oklahoma. But kind of looking at Georgia as a team, I mean, this is the team that's bringing back 14 starters on a team that, missed the playoffs last year, but went 13-1. So, yeah, this is the good team. If I made my predictions, which I'll probably have an episode probably closer to college football season starting, where I'll make my predictions for all P4 and G6. I guess I don't really know how that splits off now with the Pac-2, but kind of bringing back 14 starters on a team that just barely missed the playoffs and probably should have been in the playoffs. Yeah, this is my favorite to win the SEC. It's them in Texas. And I think that's a unanimous opinion that those two are the top 2 teams in the SEC. Bringing back guys like Carson Beck, who, whether or not he should be an Heisman frontrunner and an NFL top 5 draft pick is something I'm not ready to claim yet. A very solid quarterback in the SEC, a very, very solid quarterback. I would rank him probably, I'm trying to think of all the teams, probably at 2, right behind Quinn Ewers. The rest of the guys kind of fall in line right after Carson Beck. But those 2 are pretty unanimously across all analytical boards I've ever seen going to this year. Those 2 guys are the top 2 guys in the SEC. Had a very good year last year, throwing for almost 4,000 yards, 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Excuse me. And then of course they did lose their 2-star rushers and Dejon Edwards and Kendall Milton, but they are bringing back a few guys who rush not sporadically, but some guys who did put up 7 touchdowns and just also had 9 touchdowns altogether from the returning rushers. But they did go to the portal and get Trevor Etienne from Florida, who I think arguably is the second best running back in the SEC, right behind Jarquez Hunter. So if I did have like a positional edge, like graph, Auburn would have the edge in the running back room. But wide receivers, tight end, offensive line, D line, linebacker, there's a lot of arrows going to be pointing towards Georgia. And I know a lot of people are going to be. There was a lot of people I've already met who said that Georgia's not going to have Brock Bowers, so they're going to have that safety blanket. If you think that way, I encourage you to go look up Oscar Delp. That is going to be the starting tight end for Georgia this year. And believe me, he is the exact same player as Brock Bowers. Of course, he probably doesn't have the same high level talent and potential that Brock Bowers has and possesses just being Brock Bowers. But Oscar Delp is different. That he is a dog. I do not think there will be a drop off that much of the tight end position. You're looking at a guy who could potentially get the Mackey Award this year. So that's something that Auburn fans need to be kind of cautious about going into talking a little bit of smack before this game, because there was a lot of Auburn fans I heard from that just think Brock Bowers was the only player on this team last year who was, worth talking about. But, you lost Ladd McConkey. They lost Brock Bowers, but they're bringing back Dominic Levitt, who, if you remember him, he did play at Missouri 2 years ago, was a start receiver before Luther Burden got there, transferred to Georgia, didn't really had a pretty quiet year, but quietly second on the team in receiving yards, but never really did anything too special. He's going to be a focal point in the passing game. He's going to be wide receiver one, without a doubt. And of course, Georgia's always adding talent. Going to have Colby Young coming in as well. Ra Thomas is still there. One of Mississippi State's great wide receivers from a few years ago as well. Came in same time as Dominic Lovett. This wide receiver room is loaded. And unlike Auburn's right now, it's kind of proven how loaded it is. Auburn, could have an edge eventually in the year if we see how good this team can be for Auburn. But right now, the edge kind of goes to Georgia because we've seen all their guys before. We've seen Dominic Lovett, Ra Thomas. We've seen bits and pieces of Oscar Delp. But if there was ever a guy going into this year who I would argue could be better than Rivaldo Fairweather, it's Oscar Delp, strictly because we haven't seen a lot of him. I think last year only had 24 catches, 284 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He's gonna be putting up Brock Bowers numbers, and I don't know if that's a hot take. I don't think that's anything that should be getting hate for. Oscar Delp is going to be a top tight end in college football next year. He has all the tools that Brock Bowers has. He just was the guy behind Brock Bowers. So just keep that in mind going into this year. Offensive line, I'm going to read off the heights of Georgia's offensive line. Their center is 6'3". Their guards are 6'6" and 6'5", and their tackles are 6'7" and 6'4". Do you also want to point out Georgia's pickup offensive lineman going into next year, who is 6'11", flipped him from basketball. Georgia has had a very, very solid kind of theme going on over the past years of the Kirby Smart era, where they have just been absolutely loaded the offensive line. And I know this sounds very grim because it's supposed to be a preview to the game, but I cannot go without stating just how absolutely loaded that Georgia is. The only player there that's not returning from last year was a starter is their center, which, of course, he's a veteran player because he's a junior, but did not return as a starter. Of course, a starter, I believe, probably got drafted. That's just Georgia's just a NFL factory when it comes to offensive line. But we've seen it year after year after year since Kirby got there. His offensive line has been the trenches have been so focal to starting the Georgia dynasty that you kind of expected at this point. So that offensive line right there is, proven because there's 4 returning starters for one of the best offensive lines in college football last year. Another edge I would probably put towards Georgia. Defensive line, I would also kind of go through to Georgia as well because they're returning all 4 of their starters. They know what to expect in the middle. Nazir Stackhouse is an absolute beast. Michael Williams is also very good at the defensive end position. And the Chaz Chambliss also very good edge rusher as well. This is a Kirby Smart defense. So, of course, they're not returning a lot of guys. Their words are hard. I'm returning all of their safeties and corners, but Malachi Starks is still around, who was the Caleb Downs of 2 years ago, where he was just a freshman phenom who just looked the part. Now he's going to his junior year as being probably one of the best safeties in college football. And linebackers, of course, they're bringing back Smell Munden Senior, not senior, that's his age. I'm not sure I'm saying his name right. Smell Munden. The interior of this defense is, of course, going to be where you have the least amount of you only have one guy returning out of the starters wise. But this is a Kirby Smart defense, and I would love to come on the show and record myself saying how much I feel like Auburn has a chance to go to Athens and take down Georgia. This is my first game where I'm chalking this game before the season even starts. I think Georgia's going to be out for blood. They got shafted by the CFP committee last year. They should have been in over Alabama, SEC champion or not. Even then, it made no sense to me that they weren't. I think it would have been a much better game for them to play against Missouri. I just don't know. I mean, Auburn has a lot of key points that at this point you would have seen the best of. You're going to have to establish a run game. Last year, Auburn did a very good job of running the ball against Georgia. Going to have to try and find a way to do that again. You got Jarquez Hunter, you got Damari Alston, and you got Jeremiah Cobb. You got to find a way to establish a intermediate passing game. You got to split this defense apart. And can they do that? They could. I'm just not too sure of it right now. I just think that this Georgia team is another team that could go, undefeated throughout the year. It could be Georgia could be the first team to go 15-0 twice. That's just how. I think the only team that could really compete with them right now is Texas. Of course, there's some other teams I think could compete with them. I don't think this will be a blowout by any means. Do not take this as Auburn is going to get absolutely blown out in Athens. If that happens, it would happen, but it would suck. But I think the last time Auburn went to Athens, it was a blowout, 42-10. Before that, it was also 27-6. This could be the first time in a hot minute Auburn could go into Athens and go into halftime and go into like the third and fourth quarter with a little bit of not remorse, but kind of like you're seeing the rebuild happen. I don't think you're going to see Georgia win by 20 plus. I don't think it's going to be that. I think you see a double-digit win, maybe by 10, maybe by 14, 17, somewhere around there. This could be like a 27-10 win, 27-17, 31-17, something along those lines where it's like maybe on paper it looks like a blowout, but on the stat sheet and just overall analytics of the game, it's not going to seem that way. But this game is going to be heavily put on the shoulders of Payton Thorne and Jarquez Hunter, because those two guys is going to run through those two. And I don't think Auburn's going to come out of this game kind of looking down on themselves. They're going to be going into a bye week. They'll have 2 weeks to get ready for Missouri, who we'll be talking about next Tuesday. But I mean, this is not a game that Auburn should be expecting to. I don't want to say expecting to win. You want to win, but this is not a game I think most Auburn fans are pretty like on board with the fact that they're not. This game probably isn't too winnable. Of course, Alabama and Tuscaloosa seems a little bit more winnable because that's a huge rivalry game, and you played them a lot closer expected last year, and you played them a lot closer last time you were in Bryant Denny as well. I'm pretty sure. Unless my brain is just playing mind tricks on me. But I'm just not too sure on Auburn getting the upset in this game. I think if there was an upset, the most likely to be an upset out of the 3 games I've already chalked going into the year is Missouri. But after that's Alabama and Georgia is dead last. If I had to rank the games based on hardest to easiest, Georgia is number 1. I just don't see a world realistically right now where Auburn beats Georgia in Athens. And of course, as I'm looking it up now, never mind. Last time Auburn went to Tuscaloosa was 49-27, which did seem closer on watching it, I will say. So that's part of my brain doing that, because that's only a 22-point loss only. That's me saying that stupidly. I'm just, again, my prediction, I'm probably going to have to stick to one. I'm going to say 27-17 is kind of where I'm sitting, 27-10. That's not the best score, but confidently you held this Georgia offense to under 30, which I don't think a lot of people are going to be able to do next year. And you scored on what could be the best defense in college football. But that's my prediction for the Auburn-Georgia game. Let me know what you think of Auburn-Georgia in the comments below. If you had to pick a game for Auburn to win that you don't think they will right now, who would it be and why is it Alabama? Because I just don't think that Auburn will be beating Georgia this year. But got a bye week. Got 2 weeks from Missouri, who, again, I think could be a winnable game, but I do think Missouri is on the up and up as well. They're my third team in the SEC right now, based on my rankings. But, going into Farrett Field, I think that seems very plausible for Auburn to go into a home environment that's not been an SEC caliber yet. I think they are getting there. I think they will get there. I think they're a year out from being SEC champion, SEC championship game material again, which is funny to think about the fact that Missouri has been in the SEC championship more recently than so many teams that were on the East. So many teams that were just in SEC in general, like Ole Miss, Mississippi State, not Florida. I was about to say Florida, but not Florida. But it's, I think more than half the SEC. Really, I just want to throw shade at Ole Miss before we move on to my little rant that I have about the Phil Steele magazine, which I have. Of course, this is now available, free ad, I guess, because I always get the Phil Steele magazine. I did this last year whenever I got it. Auburn is not given the best looks on this. Payton Thorne is ranked tied for 11th with the last 5 teams in the SEC in terms of quarterback rankings, which I think is very weird. And Phil still does a lot of his magazines where he has a lot of ties. Auburn is tied with South Carolina, Kentucky in the power rankings, which I'm not too sure of why you would put Auburn on the same path as South Carolina. I think South Carolina is not a very good team this year. But that's neither here nor there. But kind of going into that, I might be biased or whatever you want to call me, just because I follow Auburn so much and kind of keep up with how the team looks and what the team and I do keep up with the rest of the SEC as well. But I don't see a world where Auburn is on the same pedigree as South Carolina. And of course, I also had Auburn below Florida, which I'm also not too keen on because I also do not think that Florida will be. I think Florida might be bowl eligible at 6-6, but this is Florida. I expect to be going after a head coach very, very soon. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents on the matter. I still love the magazine. I cannot wait to be at some point added to the list of verified followers. At some point, hopefully, Phil Steele. I bought your magazine the past 5 years in a row, so eventually. But yeah, so leave your comments below on what you think of the Auburn-Georgia game. What do you think of Payton Thorne being a representative for Auburn on SEC Media Days? How stupid am I for forgetting the word representative? And other such questions such as that. Let me know where you predict Auburn to finish in the SEC. And you know what? Rank your games from hardest to easiest in the comments below as well. But of course, I'm Dylan Larck on Twitter. Follow me on Instagram as well at Dylan Larck at DYLARCK, visual aid right there. Also follow me right here on the College Loop podcast, where you like, comment, subscribe, do all the comment I already said before. But if you're looking for us anywhere else, you're gonna have us on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. The works all at the College Loop visual aid right up there. Also links in the description below with all the apps. And I almost forgot. If I didn't play the commercial, that's crazy of me. But if you look for other ways to support the show, of course, there is the College Loop merch. I won't play the commercial for you this episode. Sorry about it. I know everyone loves the commercial, but there's the College Loop hat. There's available on the first page. Go to thewarport.com. You can get your very own College Loop hat. Comes in, I believe, 4 different colorways. It's pink, navy. I'm forgetting it. It comes in black. And there's one other color. There's 4 colors, but I can only think of 3 right now. I have the navy one. It's very comfortable. I wear it all the time. And there's also the College Loop Feeling Loopy t-shirts also available in 5 different colorways. I have mine. It's currently getting washed because I wore it yesterday after church and kind of lounged around in it. Not yesterday after church, Monday. Wore it to dinner with my family. There we go. That's my schedule of things. But of course, find me right here on the College Loop Podcast again, where you should like, comment, and subscribe. And that'll do it for this installment. This has been a very butchered exit of this episode. But with that being said, thanks for watching this installment. War Eagle, and God bless.